started to realise something was very, very seriously wrong, and thousands of people were coming in. And of course, people took to the streets at that stage and said, you know, demanded answers. What is going on? And then many, of course, hid their head as well, because they don't want to know what's going on. So 2024, here we are. Our borders are being flooded constantly with unvetted, undocumented, mostly military-aged men. We have 15,000 homeless Irish people. 4,000 of those are children, when in actual fact, the figures are probably up more like 100,000 if you were to add the people that are couch surfing or living in their mammy's back bedroom. We're being displaced and we're being replaced at a massive scale. People that are coming in have access to housing. They're jumping the housing lists. Of course, it's the government that are doing it. The people are going to take advantage of it. We understand this. Government policy is now biased towards anybody except Irish people. They also have access to healthcare when, you know, elderly people, people with special needs children are struggling to get a medical card. They also have access to education. While our own educated young people are leaving the country, these young people are coming in en masse. But the most worrying thing is the fact that the country is being flooded by young, unvetted, mostly military-aged men. So that's, I believe, you know, a very quick scroll through where we're actually at the moment, Paul.
Yeah, I suppose, Murlock, just to you now, I suppose, just your thoughts on what Edel is after saying, though, in fairness.
Yeah, well, sure, who's going to argue with all her figures and, you know, the problems that she's pointing out, you know, and I don't know, I know everybody is fed up with me saying it, but these are all legal problems. You know, Edel could have come on here and she could have complained about the fluoridation of the water. She could have complained about the weather modification programs. She could have complained about the Children's Hospital, anything she wanted to complain about, basically. And my reply would be the same. It's legal. Problems you're giving out about are legal problems. There are no morals in legal, and the system we've inherited is a legal system. I think it's time. I think it's long past time. Like as I say, our mothers and fathers should have collapsed this state. But you know, there's no point in giving out about what should have been done in the past. Like there is only now. This is what we have to do now. The men and women of now must collapse this legal state. We have to return to law.
Yeah, Edel, in your now, just in your opinion or your thoughts, what can we do? Are you aware of this deregistering and this article? You see this article here in the graphic of Article 6 of the 1937 Constitution, which I think Murlock wants to talk about or just explain more about to the people. So, what's your own thought, Edel, how we can solve this? You mentioned the politics. Yeah, you mentioned the
sure, I am absolutely aware of it. My issue is, and again, what Chris is saying is 100% correct, but the problem is the enemy is at the gate. We're in a state of emergency. As I've said before, there's people that are still waiting on 2 weeks to flatten the curve. So how are you going to mobilize people to deregister? The elections are in 2 weeks. As you see, all the main parties have got between 15 and 23,000 to take a non-national person on board. So these elections are going ahead. They're definitely going ahead, whether we step in or if everybody deregister tomorrow, you know, and there's validation in what Chris is saying. I'm not here to argue about that. If we all deregister tomorrow, these are still going to go ahead. So now then what you're going to have is all these parties back in place. We know the power begins with the county councils. That's where the corruption starts, with the county councils, because without them, a lot of these politicians in Gangster House would not have been able to do what they do. It's the collaboration of what these people have done on that level. That's not going to stop, in my opinion. It's only going to get worse, because you're going to take in, again, these people are being used as well. A lot of non-national people, they haven't got a clue. They haven't got a clue of Bunracht or anything else, but they are going to be used against the Irish people. They're going to be weaponized against the Irish people in the forms of, they're going to give priority to people coming into the country rather than Irish people. So I understand what Chris is saying, but I'm not following. I'm trying to follow the logic of it, that if we all deregister tomorrow, it's not going to, This is a war, and now we have to apply war tactics. Unfortunately, I never wanted to be a politician, and anyone that I've met that now has registered, if they, they're, most of them are a certain age, with all due respect, I'm probably older than most of them, but if they had wanted political careers, they probably would have done it years ago. But they see this now that we are in emergency times, we're in exceptional times. So I'm very happy to listen, but I'm just not sure when we're in an emergency situation, the rules change.
Yeah.
Our constitution doesn't change, but our rules and our moral compass and everything is completely different now. That's how I see it, you know. That's just my opinion.
Oh yeah, grand. Murlock, can you see that? Can you see that photograph now of after you get fixed on the screen? Can you see that there?
I
do see it, yeah.
anyway.
Yeah. Murlock, can you go through that and explain that and about the rulers? Can you just explain that, where that comes from, and maybe just explain that, what it means?
Well, it's explaining to you that the state is three parts, and it's telling you what the three parts are, and it's explaining to you where the state gets its power. It gets its power from the people who have the right to designate their rulers. And as I say, slaves have rulers. People argue that slavery has been abolished, but slavery was abolished in 1865, but slavery by consent is legal. It's a bondage system that we've inherited. And it's a system of no morals. But this is what the article is explaining to you clearly here. It's explaining to you the three parts of state. And this is kind of Edel's problem, right? There's a few problems. She said that we're in a state of emergency. This state, when it mentions the word emergency, has the power to implement martial law. And that's why they do nothing wrong when they decide to remove all your fundamental rights, by the way, that you have under the terms and conditions of that devil era contract. So fundamental rights are legal rights, they're all revocable. So the state does nothing wrong when it revokes all of our rights to do whatever it wants to do to further its agenda. Now, there's another problem. Edel mentioned, that we're in a state of war, and we have to do something different. Well, why is voting for change? What's different? That sounds like the same old hat to me. I've heard that all my life. I've heard just people presenting themselves at election time and telling me that they're going to do the devil and all. I've heard it for all my life, and it doesn't ever change. So I think, you do need to change tack, absolutely. So, look, to be honest with you, I'll tell you who I blame, because I know Edel is blaming this one, that one, the other one, and I know that it's horrible what I have to say, but I know that it is the electorate who are ultimately to blame, because it is the electorate who convert this fraud. The fraud has no power without the people being registered to be ruled under its terms and conditions. But who I would be inclined to blame instead of the electorate, because I don't think it's fair to blame the electorate when they're not fully informed. But I would blame the likes of gripped media, Niall Boylan, who's also running for election right now.
Yeah.
I could keep going. All these, Stephen Kerr is another one that's going for election. Stephen Kerr has said that he will not speak with me because I cannot string a sentence together, which I find a nasty, horrible remark for that man to make of me. Because, I'm an uneducated man and perhaps I don't have a massive vocabulary, but, I speak a lay language and I like to have people comprehend what I have to say. I'm not trying to impress anybody. I'm just trying to give them the truth that they can make an informed decision. So I blame the so-called alternative media. That's who I blame. And I blame the small fish, all those guys that go around saying that they're citizen journalists who don't report the full story to the people. There's two sides to every story, and people deserve to hear the two sides and allow the people to make an informed decision. And Paul, I think you'll attest yourself that every time myself and yourself have any interactions here, the figures are good. The figures are healthy compared to what we normally get, like with different subjects. And I see it on every time I do any interviews with anybody. I always see that their numbers go up by hundreds of %. So people telling me that there's no interest in the subject, that's only because it's blocked and ignored for no other reason. If this subject was given a reasonable platform, again,
Murlock, just one before,
pull in an audience. This word is on the street.
Murlock, just before I go back to Edel, can you just explain there the rulers of the state? Is that what I would call the unelected officials, or is that the politicians in Minster House? Just who is that in your understanding, the rulers of the state? Is that the unelected officials, the technocrats, bureaucrats, or is it the boys above in Minster House?
It's collectively, it's all the agents of the de facto state are your rulers. But you see, as I was explaining there to Edel and yourself, the state is divided in three parts. Two of the parts are what we call the permanent government. They are the majority, they're 66%. They are the judiciary and about 400 ironically named senior civil servants. They make up the majority of what the state is. So even if Edel does get elected, Edel will have to sign a contract stating that she will fulfill and her fiduciary duties, fulfill and uphold her fiduciary duties to those two branches of state, and that's a trustee contract that you will fulfill your job for the state. So this majority government, this 66%, these two parts, they don't require the executive branch to function. As I say, if you can remember back to 2011 when Tweedledum and Tweedledee were contemplating on whether to get into bed together or not, the state ran for 11 months with no executive branch. The executive branch is just there to give the people the illusion that they have some sort of a choice in how matters are run in the country. That's all they're there for. That's why they're called acting politicians. And each of those acting politicians has 10 legal advisors. So you're told what to say, you're given your script. If you don't want to do it, there's the door. You're contracted to do this job.
Yeah,
I'm sorry to say, it's a scam all ends up. And by the way, I know you have people going around, they tell me that there's some sort of a Bunruck na hÉireann that's written on a different colour paper or something. Bunruck na hÉireann is a fraud built upon a fraud. Bunruck na hÉireann is a bastardised version of the 1922 constitution, which was forced upon the people under the threat of genocide. Bunruck na hÉireann was used to reverse the ownership of all our resources. Bunruck na hÉireann was created by a senior civil servant, which is absolutely unlawful. No civil servant should have any hand, act, or part in the creation of a constitution that was intended to use to rule the people. The thing is just a fraud. It's a scam. It's a legal contract. I'm not fluent in legal. I presume Edel is not fluent in legal. Why are we using a contract if we can't even read it? We're not fluent in the language that it's written in. We need a lawful contract if we're going to use it. And this is for conducting commerce, for conducting business in a lawful fashion instead of legal. So sorry, I'm rambling now, Paul.
No problem. Edel, you can see that article there in front of Article 6. What's your response to that, or what's your thoughts on that? The Murlock said that there's a two-thirds built-in majority of the unelected bureaucrats, officials, and the judiciary, and then ultimately they just make the decisions. Or what are your thoughts on that? Or
well, look, Paul, we can't argue with that, and I most certainly am not here to.
Yes, I understand.
I'm just not here to disrespect Chris or anything. I'm always open to learning, and I'm always open to listening. And I would hope anyone that has seen any of my work, I don't call myself a citizen journalist, but I try and get information out there. And through Wake Up Era, which is non-political, we have got a huge amount of work. We've handed out nearly 1 million flyers and info drops at this stage, like something like 300. So we're listening to people on the streets, and we're hearing, and that includes all the people, a lot of people, or many people that have been injured by the vaccine. So what I'm not arguing with what he's saying at all, and I hope I would have respect for what people are saying. My issue is, where do we start? If you have an electorate, if you have people, or if you've watched any of my videos, I say to people, I'm not here to be a leader. I'm asking people of County Meath now to step up, to stand out, and to speak up. I'm just one person doing my best to see, can I do in my small way? I'm no slave to anybody, and anyone that has watched any of the stuff I do would know I am no slave to anybody. I stand under God. That's what I do. But apart from that, even with the when we did the campaign for the referendum, that was a huge body of work, believe it or not, to get out 250,000 flyers to inform people what it was about. Took teams of people every day out on the streets. It was a coordinated effort. So if we want to get what Chris is saying, if we want to get that information out to the people, that's the kind of concerted effort you would actually need, and more. I'm not against it. I just don't know where to begin with that, how you're going to do it between now and election time. I genuinely don't. I'm trying to join the dots with Chris here and say, well, how are we going to do that? How are we, I want to see the structure. I'm a bit of a structure person. I want to see how we're going to do that. Because trust me, after the referendum, people had to rest for a week. They were so exhausted, day and night, getting flyers, going round from county to county. We had no money. People were just gracious, and someone paid for petrol. And we got the information out. That's the kind of effort you need to get the information to the people, because they're going to go home and listen to RTE again. There's the problem. So I'm not against what Chris is saying, and I think he knows that. We've chatted yesterday for a while. I'm not against it. I just don't know how you're going to do it at this late stage.
Yeah.